General Tyke stood on the bridge of his massive warship, his 8-foot-tall frame dominating the space. His hard exoskeleton reflected the blue lights of the command center, creating patterns across his midnight black armor. 4 arms crossed over his chest as he watched the stars through the main viewport. The ship hummed with quiet efficiency. His crew worked at their stations, their mandibles clicking softly as they communicated. None spoke loudly. None dared disturb the general without reason. "Sir," Officer Day approached, his posture showing proper submission. His antennae flattened against his head, and his secondary arms remained tucked close to his body. "Our sensors have detected an unknown vessel." Tyke turned slowly, his multifaceted eyes, each containing thousands of tiny lenses, focused on the smaller officer. "Show me," he said. His voice was deep and smooth, like stones grinding together. The main screen flickered to life. A small ship appeared, moving steadily through the darkness. It was sleek with curved edges and glowing blue engines. Small by their standards, perhaps only large enough for a dozen occupants. "It matches no known design in our database," Day continued. "We believe it may be from beyond the outer rim." Tyke moved closer to the screen. In 300 cycles of conquest, he had encountered 47 different species. Each had been catalogued, studied, and most eventually subjugated. The thought of something new made his blood quicken. "Fascinating," he said. His mandibles spread slightly in what his species considered a smile. "Lock tractor beams. Bring it aboard." The crew moved quickly to obey. Officer Day directed the operation as the small ship was pulled into the massive docking bay of their warship. "Deploy warriors," Tyke ordered. "Full battle gear. I want the occupants alive." He watched from the bridge as his soldiers surrounded the small craft. They stood 3 times the height of the ship's main door, their natural armor supplemented by battle plating and plasma weapons. The small ship's door finally opened. A bipedal figure emerged, stood still for a moment, then raised 2 empty hands in what appeared to be a universal gesture of peace. "Bring the leader to me," Tyke ordered. 20 minutes later, the doors to the bridge slid open. 2 guards entered, flanking a small figure. It stood upright on 2 legs with 2 arms and a rounded head. Its skin was soft and pale, covered partially with blue fabric. Dark hair framed a face with 2 eyes, a small nose, and a mouth without mandibles. Most interesting, though, was what Tyke didn't notice. The fear pheromones that should have been pouring off this tiny creature weren't there. Every species they had ever encountered produced them when faced with his kind. It was biological, automatic. Yet this being showed none of the signs. "Leave us," Tyke ordered his guards. They hesitated, then obeyed. He approached the small creature, towering over it. His shadow completely covered its form. He leaned down, bringing his face close to the alien's. This close he could see the details of its eyes, round pupils surrounded by brown irises. Simple eyes, not compound like his, yet they held a strange depth. "I am General Tyke of the Dominant Sphere," he said, his translator converting his clicks and whistles into basic galactic standard. "Who stands before me?" The creature met his gaze directly. No trembling, no widened eyes, no rapid breathing, nothing. "I am Captain Yuna of Earth's Exploration Fleet," she replied. Her voice was high-pitched compared to his species, but clear and steady. Tyke circled her slowly, examining her from all angles. His antennae extended, trying to detect any trace of fear scent. Nothing. "You know what I am?" he asked. "An intelligent being from a world not my own," she answered simply. "You know what I can do to you, to your ship, to your crew?" Captain Yuna tilted her head slightly. "I can imagine. You clearly have superior technology and physical advantages, but that doesn't answer why you've brought us here instead of destroying. Show us outright." Tyke stopped circling. He had expected begging or at least signs of distress. Every other species trembled before him. Even those who tried to hide their fear couldn't control their bodies' reactions to his presence. "You do not tremble," he said, moving closer again. All others fear me. Should I? She asked, looking directly into his compound eyes. Tyke's antennae twitched involuntarily. In all his long life, this had never happened. The reaction spread through his body like a physical shock. What are you? He whispered. Captain Yuna smiled slightly. Just human. Nothing more. Scientist Kyo stood next to General Tyke, both watching the human through a one-way window. The observation room was cool and dimly lit. Captain Yuna moved, through a series of stretches in her cell, seemingly unbothered by her captivity. 3 days, Tyke said, his mandibles clicking softly. 3 days, and not a single sign of fear. Kyo tapped on his data pad, bringing up charts and readings. The scientist was smaller than Tyke, his exoskeleton a lighter shade of blue-black. His movements were quick and precise. Her vitals remained steady regardless of stimuli, Kyo explained. Heart rate, skin moisture, pupil dilation, all normal. It defies everything we know about other species. Tyke leaned closer to the window. The human was now doing what appeared to be push-ups, lifting her body weight with her arms repeatedly. Explain it to me again, Tyke ordered. Kyo's antennae flattened slightly. Our species produces natural fear pheromones. It's how we evolved as apex predators. These chemicals trigger fear responses in other beings. Every species we've encountered has receptors that detect these signals. They can't help but feel afraid around us. Yet she doesn't. No. Either humans can't detect our pheromones, or they process them differently. Tyke watched Yuna complete her exercises and sit cross-legged, on the floor. She appeared to be meditating now. I want more tests, Tyke said. The next day, Tyke had Yuna placed in a room with Commander Bak, his fiercest warrior. Bak stood nearly 9 feet tall, his exoskeleton scarred from countless battles. His upper arms ended in natural blade-like extensions that could cut through metal. Through the observation window, Tyke watched Bak circle the human, clicking and hissing threats. Yuna simply stood in the center of the room, watching the warrior with interest but no sign of terror. Your soldier moves well, she commented when Tyke entered afterward. Very efficient. I'd guess he's trained for close combat against multiple opponents. Tyke's eyes narrowed. You should have been cowering, Yuna shrugged. Would that have helped my situation? 2 days later, Tyke tried again. This time he showed her recordings of his conquests. Planets burning, species surrendering, prisoners begging for mercy. Yuna watched it all with the same calm interest. Impressive. Fleet movements, she noted. You coordinate your ships better than most admirals I've known. Tyke switched off the projection in frustration. What is wrong with you? Why don't you fear me? Should I waste energy on fear when I need my wits? To survive? She asked simply. The 5th day brought a direct interrogation. Tyke sat across from Yuna in a small room. The lighting was deliberately harsh, casting sharp shadows across his imposing form. Where does your kind come from? He demanded. Earth, a small blue planet far from here, Yuna replied. She spoke clearly, her hands resting calmly on the table between them. We're fairly new to deep space travel. Tell me about your species. We're adaptable. We evolved as prey animals originally. This caught Tyke by surprise. His antennae shot upward. Prey? Not predators? No. Larger, faster animals hunted us. We were small, weak, and vulnerable, Yuna explained. So we developed our minds instead of physical weapons. We learned to think, our way out of danger. Tyke leaned back, studying her. This contradicted everything he believed about dominant species. In his experience, only apex predators ever achieve space travel. If you evolved from prey, then you should understand fear better than most, he said, his voice low and threatening. Yuna smiled slightly. Perhaps that's exactly why I don't show it. Explain. Fear was constant for early humans. Those who froze in terror died. Those who could think despite their fear survived. She tapped her temple. We didn't evolve past fear. We evolved to function with it, to use it rather than be used by it. That night, Tyke stood alone in his private chamber, replaying the conversation in his mind. The idea disturbed him deeply. His species had evolved as perfect predators, using fear as a weapon just as effectively as their natural armor and strength. "Computer, bring up all data on prey species evolution," he ordered. Hours later, scientist Keo found him still reviewing the information. "Sir, perhaps we need a different approach with the human," Keo suggested. Tyke's eyes shifted from the screen to his scientist. "Yes. If physical intimidation fails, we will try something else." He paused. "Bring the rest of her crew to the interrogation chamber. Let's see if she remains so calm when her own kind is threatened." But deep in his mind, a troubling thought formed. What if this prey species had evolved beyond the reach of his kind's greatest weapon? Yuna sat in her new quarters, much more comfortable than her original cell. The room was larger, now with actual furniture designed for her human form. She scrolled through a data tablet Tyke had provided, studying the history of his species. "Fascinating," she murmured to herself. The text described centuries of clan warfare before they developed space travel. Different hives competing, conquering, absorbing each other. The door slid open. General Tyke entered, ducking his large frame through the doorway. Yuna no longer found his appearance startling. The forearms, the gleaming exoskeleton, the complex eyes. She had grown used to him over the past weeks. "You requested more historical records," he said, his translator converting his clicks and whistles into words she could understand. "Yes. Thank you." She gestured to the empty space beside her. Tyke hesitated, then sat down. The furniture creaked under his weight. "Your world has never been unified?" Yuna asked, showing him a passage about ongoing conflicts between northern and southern hives. "Our strength comes from competition," Tyke replied. His upper arms gestured, and what she had learned was a sign of pride. "Each hive strives to be strongest. The weak are absorbed or eliminated." Yuna nodded, considering this. "Yet you've conquered half the galaxy together. That requires cooperation between hives. Necessity." Tyke clicked, a sound his translator didn't bother converting. "Other species would destroy us if given the chance. We fight among ourselves, but unite against external threats." "Like humans," Yuna observed. "Yes. Though your kind presents unique challenges." Tyke's antennae moved in what she now recognized as thoughtfulness. "Your immunity to our natural advantages is why I'm bringing you to the diplomatic summit tomorrow." Yuna looked up in surprise. "You want me there?" "Other species find it difficult to negotiate with us. Their fear clouds their judgment. You are not affected. You can observe what I cannot." The next day, Yuna stood slightly behind Tyke's large chair in the grand meeting hall. 6 different alien delegations had arrived to discuss trade routes and border disputes. Most avoided looking directly at the general, their body language showing clear signs of stress. "The mining rights to the Zorhan system have always belonged to the Braxis Confederation," one delegate argued, its tentacles waving in agitation. "Your claims are recent and unsupported," Tyke countered. "The dominant sphere requires those resources." Yuna watched the delegates carefully. Most seemed intimidated, quick to back down when Tyke pressed a point. But one representative, a tall, thin being with gray skin, behaved differently. His eyes darted around too much. His 3-fingered hand kept moving toward his ornate belt. During a momentary pause in the discussions, Yuna stepped closer to Tyke. "General," she said quietly, "the delegate from Nevo. His hand keeps moving to his belt. I believe he's armed." Tyke didn't visibly react, but his lower right hand pressed a button on his chair arm. Within seconds, security officers entered the room. "A routine security check," Tyke announced calmly. "Please remain seated." The officers moved quickly to the Nevo delegate. When they checked his belt, they found a small energy weapon hidden in an ornamental pouch. The delegate was immediately removed from the chamber. Later that evening, Tyke appeared at Yuna's quarters again. He entered without waiting for permission, his posture rigid. "The Nevo assassin confessed," he said. "He was paid to eliminate me during the negotiations." Yuna nodded. "I guessed as much." His behavior was too nervous even compared to the others. Teak moved closer. "You could have let him kill me," he said bluntly. "It would have created chaos. Perhaps an opportunity for you and your crew to escape." "That's true," Yuna admitted. "Then why warn me? Why save the life of your captor?" "Because that's not who I am," Yuna replied simply. She looked directly into his compound eyes. "I don't want anyone to die if I can prevent it. Not even someone holding me prisoner." Tyke's antennae fluttered rapidly, a sign of confusion she had come to recognize. He paced the small room, his secondary arms twitching. "Your actions make no sense by any biological imperative I understand," he finally said. "Self-preservation should be your priority. Humans are complex. We value life, even the lives of those who might be our enemies." She paused. "Besides, I don't think you're my enemy anymore, are you?" Tyke stood very still. Then, in a gesture she had never seen him make before, he lowered his upper body slightly, almost a bow. "No," he said quietly. "I am not your enemy, Captain Yuna." The next day, Tyke ordered Yuna's entire crew transferred from the research wing to proper quarters. He assigned them limited access to non-sensitive areas of the ship, and for the first time, he addressed Yuna by her name rather than human or captain. Something had changed between them, not quite friendship, but perhaps the beginning of understanding. Yuna walked beside General Tyke through the wide corridors of the research wing. After weeks aboard his ship, she had grown used to the curious stares from the crew. A human walking freely alongside their feared leader was an unusual sight. "You've been concerned about your crew," Tyke said, his deep voice rumbling. "I want you to see they are safe." They approached a series of large rooms separated from the corridor by transparent force fields. In the first room, Yuna saw Engineer Han working on what appeared to be engine schematics. His workspace was well equipped with tools and displays. "Han looks good," she commented, relieved to see her chief engineer absorbed in his work. They continued walking. In the next room, Dr. G was cataloging biological samples, her face showing concentration rather than distress. "Your medical officer has been sharing knowledge of human physiology," Tyke explained. "In exchange, we've provided information about species you've never encountered." The third room contained Pilot Sue, who appeared to be running flight simulations on a holographic display. He looked up, spotted Yuna, and smiled with obvious relief. "They haven't been harmed," Yuna observed, feeling tension leave her shoulders. "I told you they would be treated well," Tyke replied. "They have valuable knowledge, and they are your people." The way he said the last part made Yuna look up at him, wondering at the slight change in his tone. Before she could ask what he meant, a piercing alarm cut through the air. Red lights began flashing along the corridors. Tyke's posture instantly changed. His mandibles flared wide and all four arms tensed. "Rebel faction," he growled. "They've breached the ship." Several security officers rushed toward them, weapons drawn. "General, we need to move you to a secure location," the lead officer said, urgently. "Take the human back to her quarters," Tyke ordered. "I can help," Yuna offered. "Stay out of sight," Tyke insisted. "The rebels won't distinguish between you and us." He turned and moved quickly down the corridor with his security team, leaving Yuna with a single guard. They had just started moving in the opposite direction when an explosion rocked the ship. The lights flickered and Yuna stumbled into the wall. "We need to get to shelter," her guard said, helping her regain her balance. Another explosion. Closer, this time. The guard looked torn between following orders and responding to the attack. "Go," Yuna said. "I know the way back." The guard hesitated, then nodded and ran toward the sound of weapons fire. Yuna started toward her quarters but stopped when she heard shouts coming from a side passage. Something told her to investigate. Peering around the corner, she saw General Tyke surrounded by 3 rebel soldiers. His security team was nowhere in sight. 2 dead rebels lay on the floor, but Tyke was cornered, one arm hanging uselessly at his side. One rebel soldier raised a large plasma cannon, aiming directly at Tyke's head. Yuna didn't think. She acted. Sprinting from her hiding place, she launched herself at the armed rebel. Her smaller size gave her speed and the element of surprise. She crashed into the soldier just as the weapon discharged. The blast went wide, grazing Tyke's shoulder instead of hitting his head. The impact knocked the weapon from the rebel's hands. Yuna rolled away, scrambling for cover as Tyke took advantage of the distraction to attack the other rebels with his remaining good arms. The fight was brutal and quick. Despite his injury, Tyke dispatched the remaining rebels with efficient violence. Greenish acidic blood leaked from his wounded shoulder and arm, sizzling where it hit the floor. Security forces finally arrived, securing the area. Yuna emerged from her hiding spot and approached Tyke, who was leaning against the wall, clearly in pain. "Medical team is coming, sir," an officer reported. "Help me get him to the medical bay," Yuna said, moving to Tyke's uninjured side. After a moment's hesitation, the officer complied. They supported Tyke between them as they made their way through the damaged corridors. The general was heavy, his exoskeleton adding considerable weight, but Yuna didn't complain. In the medical bay, specialists worked quickly to treat Tyke's wounds. Yuna stayed nearby, watching as they applied a neutralizing agent to his acidic blood before beginning repairs to his damaged exoskeleton. When the immediate treatment was complete, and they were briefly alone, Tyke turned his compound eyes toward her. "Why?" he rasped, his voice weaker than she'd ever heard it. "Why what?" Yuna asked. "Why risk yourself? You could have escaped in the chaos. Or let me die." Yuna met his gaze steadily. "I couldn't do that." "Because you're not afraid?" "No," she said quietly. "Because I was terrified." Tyke's antennae twitched in obvious confusion. "You think I don't feel fear?" Yuna continued. "But that's not true. I was absolutely terrified just now. My heart is still racing, see?" She held out her hand, which trembled slightly. "Humans aren't fearless, General. We just act despite our fear." Tyke stared at her trembling hand, then at her face. Something fundamental seemed to shift in his understanding. "You felt fear, but you still helped me." "Yes," she said simply. "That's what courage is. Not the absence of fear, but action in the face of it." Tyke lay back, his compound eyes still fixed on her. His worldview, built on the belief that fear was the ultimate control mechanism, that his species' dominance came from their ability to terrify others, was crumbling before him. "Then your species is stronger than I ever understood," he finally said. The great ceremonial hall of the dominant sphere warship glowed with soft blue light. Hundreds of warriors stood in perfect formation, their black exoskeletons catching and reflecting the light. The chamber was silent except for the occasional soft click of mandibles. Captain Yuna stood with her crew at the center of the hall. Engineer Han, Dr. G, and Pilot Sue flanked her, all wearing their freshly cleaned Earth exploration fleet uniforms. They looked small among the towering insectoid warriors, but they held their heads high. General Tyke entered the hall from a side chamber. His wounded shoulder and arm had been repaired, though faint lines still showed where the damage had been. He wore ceremonial armor that enhanced his already impressive frame. Behind him walked 7 other high-ranking commanders, their antennae raised in formal posture. Tyke approached the center of the hall where a small raised platform stood. He gestured for Yuna to join him. She stepped forward, feeling hundreds of compound eyes watching her every move. "For 30 generations," Tyke began, his deep voice carrying easily through the large space, "we have conquered through strength and fear. We believed this was the only path to survival in a hostile universe. The assembled warriors remained perfectly still. We believed that other species must be subjects, never equals," he continued. "This belief has guided our expansion. Across half the galaxy," Tyke turned slightly, looking directly at Yuna now. "Then we encountered humans, a species that evolved not as predators, but as prey. A species that knows fear intimately, yet acts despite it. A species that showed me mercy when I was vulnerable." A low murmur ran through the assembled warriors. This was clearly new information to many of them. "The High Command has reviewed my recommendation," Tyke said, his voice growing stronger. "Today we forge a different path." From beneath his ceremonial armor, Tyke produced a blade, It gleamed silver blue in the light, its edge impossibly sharp. Every warrior in the room recognized it as the sacred claw, a symbol of their species' dominance for countless generations. This blade has tasted the blood of 47 subject species, Tyke explained to Yuna and her crew. Today it serves a new purpose. He extended his primary right arm toward Yuna, offering the ceremonial blade handle first. The human species has shown us that true power lies not in the absence of fear, but in the mastery of it. They will be allies, not subjects, equals, not conquests. The hall remained completely silent as Yuna reached out and accepted the blade. Its weight surprised her, but she held it firmly, completing the ritual. With this exchange, Tyke announced, we recognize Earth and its colonies as sovereign and free. We offer protection, knowledge, and friendship. After the ceremony, the humans returned to their quarters to prepare for departure. Their ship had been repaired and restocked for the long journey home. They would carry with them the first formal alliance treaty between humans and the dominant sphere. As Yuna supervised the loading of the last supplies, she sensed someone behind her. Turning, she found Tyke standing in the docking bay watching her work. General, she greeted him with a small smile. Captain, he replied, moving closer. Your ship is ready. Yes. Thank you for the repairs and supplies. They stood in silence. For a moment, two species so different yet now connected by something neither had expected. Not everyone agrees with my decision, Tyke finally said, his voice lower than usual. Some believe I've grown weak. Change is never easy, Yuna replied. Some of our people will be afraid of yours too. Your kind will change us, he said, his antennae moving in what she now recognized as a thoughtful pattern. Our society has been built on fear and dominance for thousands of years. And yours will change us, she replied simply. That's how alliance works. We learn from each other. We grow together. Tyke extended all four of his arms in a gesture she had never seen before. This is how our ancestors said goodbye to those they hoped to see again, he explained. Yuna smiled and reached out, touching one of his offered hands with her own. Then until we meet again, General Tyke. An hour later, her small ship pulled away from the massive warship. Pilot Sue guided them carefully out of the docking bay and into open space. On the observation deck of his warship, Tyke stood alone, watching the tiny ship disappear into the darkness. For the first time in his species-long history, they had found equals rather than conquests. He wasn't sure what would come next, but he felt something new growing inside him, something very much like hope. On the journey home, Yuna sat alone in her cabin, recording her captain's log. Final entry regarding first contact with species. Designation dominant sphere, she spoke clearly. We came seeking new worlds but found something far more valuable, a future where strength is measured not by domination, but by cooperation. She paused, thinking of Tyke and the unexpected connection they had formed. Earth will soon face its greatest challenge and its greatest opportunity. We are no longer alone in the universe, and our new allies will remind us that courage isn't being fearless, it's facing our fears and moving forward anyway.